Good morning, everyone, and welcome to NorthStar Community Online and in-person service. So glad to be here. And again, I assume if you are here or if you are listening to me, you are in some level of recovery. Either you're trying to deny that you need recovery all the way, but you're interested all the way till you've been in recovery for many years and maintaining and keep moving forward. Either way, welcome. And recovery is a beautiful, beautiful journey, but it's hard, it's difficult, and it's painful. So today we're going to talk about willpower versus grace. So we've been talking a lot about purpose, and I hope I can tie this in okay so you'll make sense as to why I'm doing this, but I hope we all understand, and for many of us in the recovery that's been there for a while, we know willpower doesn't work. Anytime I hear someone say to me, I am never going to do X again, I know that they will relapse. That's why the cliche saying of one day at a time actually makes sense. We have to understand with addiction, our brain quits working in the way it's supposed to. We become disconnected from ourselves. That disconnection enables our brain to really instill upon us the need to be addicted to whatever that is, to get our high, to get our ability to get through today. And it gets more and more. We all know, I'm talking to the choir now when I talk about all this because you get this. But the point is that willpower will never win. Grace is what wins. So Dr. Cheryl Jones, psychiatrist I know, told me one time, you have to see addiction recovery, you have to look at one of two ways. You look at it as a moral model or a medical model. If you do medical model, you see addiction as a disease that requires a treatment modality. The treatment modality goes all the way from stopping, of course, recognizing what drives your addictive behaviors, and then connecting with other people, talking about what's going on, facing your pain, going to support groups, medication if necessary, but therapy, awareness, connection, support groups, that is what a medical model is. The moral model is you need to suck it up, I'm just going to stop, I'm never going to do it again, I'm going to make sure that I can stop doing this, and guess what, that lasts not very long. And the reason is because, at least in my opinion, addictive thinking starts before addictive behaviors. Addictive thinking is what drives our addictive behaviors. If I cannot appreciate my life, and if I cannot see myself as valuable and worthy, it's pretty hard for me to live my life without some types of addiction. So, kind of what I'm thinking here, what we need to hear about today is, I am going to be broken and weak. I'm going to trust the grace of God, and I'm not going to trust my muscular spirituality. So what exactly is grace? For many of us, we kind of know what it means. It's a good thing, but if you don't really know what it means, it's hard to understand. But so grace is focused most clearly on the life, the death, and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. He came here as the Messiah to shoulder our hurts, our habits, and our hang-ups. He took those with him. So one thing that we can do now is with grace, we can quit keeping score. You don't have to continue to see yourself as failing. You don't have to consider to see yourself as a loser. You don't have to continue seeing yourself as weak, unable to stop, all those things, when the fact is, with grace, Jesus took that with him. So if you can buy this, if you can buy a higher power that loved you so much that he came here and was put to death for you, for me, for everyone, then you have a chance. Jesus' grace can transform us by changing our awareness of ourselves, of our potential as human beings and as humankind, and our awareness of God's gracious purpose for us. God's grace is made available to all of us who choose to ask. So I always think about the 12 steps. I always say the 12 steps are grace in action. And to be honest with you, at NorthStar, we're not a 12-step group, but we love AA. We love the 12 steps. And really, I do focus a lot on step one. Step one is we admitted that we were powerless over our dependencies, that our life had become unmanageable. For us to take that step from denial, rationalization, anger, resentments, to saying, you know what, I do think I got a problem here, and it's bigger than me, that's the big step. But it's hard to do, because if you think about it, the things that we put in place to help us get through our own pain, our own misery, help us to avoid all that, not only did it not work, it's actually destructive. Now, the problem is, at first, some of these things do feel really good. I mean, let's not be naive here. Some of the things we do to avoid pain does avoid pain. The problem is, though, it gets so big, so powerful, it becomes unmanageable, and it begins to destroy our lives. So the things we put our faith in actually become destructive. That's not easy to do, to come to that point. We have lots of denial, lots of rationalization. We fear the change. We disguise our rationalizations even more so we don't have to think about it. And again, you hear me talk about this, but we so often talk about how we at NorthStar will talk about with some humor about some of the crazy things that we rationalize and accept as reality when we're addicted. Like I'll tell people who are in their people addictions and they're out there and they're texting their loved one trying to get them to change, and they're following on them to make sure they're not doing the things they shouldn't, and they're doing all these things. And I always say, there's not such thing as a magic text. That text's not going to change them. The best thing you can do is let them experience what they have to experience to recover. And what is that? We have to experience pain. You all know that. You wouldn't be sitting here listening to me if you hadn't experienced pain at some level. And let's be honest, some of us are pretty hard-headed. Our rock bottoms, our pain has been deep. Some of us continue to do these things. I mean, how many of you are tired of being in your 30-second broken relationship and keep thinking the next one's going to be the right one? I'm going to find that person that I can fix, that I can love to health, or this person's going to complete my life. How many of you are doing that one? How many of you are online looking at the news, focused on all the disasters and all the doom and gloom that's going to hit us, or focused on everybody else and their lives online, and how happy they are and how miserable you are? Or how many of you need to see how many likes you get so you can move on? All that is to avoid our pain. And of course, we know the substances, right? We know that one. But they're all destructive. They all create issues for us. And for many of us, we kind of put ourselves in all three of those categories. And when we finally figure out that we're broken, that we can't fix our issues, that intervention is required for us, we have to get that step one, we can make a difference then. So when we think about, so why am I talking about this when we talk about purpose? The fact is, you will never find meaning and love in your life as long as you're addicted. You will continue to betray yourself. You'll continue to harm others. You'll continue to use and abuse and destroy your life. You will never, ever find meaning and love while you're addicted. It's not possible. So that's why we talk about this. So figure it out. The shame you're experiencing, the powerlessness you feel. When we talk about finding meaning and love in our lives, so many of us just want to go, oh my God, I'm not thinking about that. I'm surviving. Well, you know what? Surviving is not living. It's a prison. It's painful. It's miserable. We have to find meaning and love, but we can't do that if we don't connect. And so what addictive, excuse me, when you hear me talk about addictive thinking, thinking is our primary prison. It is a prison to us. We critique all the stuff we do. We despise ourselves. We loathe ourselves. We judge. I don't know whatever words I can use here. We don't like ourselves. That's why we're addicted. For many of us, we got an early start on that because of so much was going on in our lives. We expect mediocrity at best. We don't deserve to have anything good happen, and if it does happen, something bad will soon follow. We expect abandonment. It's hard for us to figure these things out, and we have to keep trying to figure out ways to do this. And we have to figure out when we understand our wounded self again, our wounded self by itself is not bad. It is, but its purpose is not. So let's say this about wounded self. Wounded self is doing the wrong things for the right reason. Wounded self is saying, look, you've had this terrible life. You've been abandoned. You've been traumatized. You've had people betray you. You've done dumb things. You've betrayed yourself. All these things. So let's just not take any risks. Let's not find joy and meaning in life. Let's focus on getting by, on surviving. Stay safe. One of the characteristics for us that are addicted to people are with the codependencies. Oftentimes one of the great symptoms of being a codependent is that we're very low risk takers. We don't want to be hurt. We don't want to get hurt. We don't want to experience joy and love and all that. What we do is we go out and we find other broken people to help keep us stay broken. But if we can understand our PTSD, if we can understand the abandonment in our lives, if we can understand all that stuff, we don't have to keep surviving. And I know some of us, there's not a contest here on who has the worst story. I know that one is so popular, and it is, I tell you, I like them too. I love to hear the stories about people who were so dysfunctional, and now they're not. But you know what? Abandonment is abandonment, trauma is trauma. And we have a choice to make. We can ignore it, try to get around it, be addicted, all those things, or we can put it in place, become aware of what's doing to us now, move forward, and then make that trauma a gift. We were talking about that earlier today in our small group. One of the people in there who was a former drug addict and alcoholic, but he really was addicted to his anger, pain, loathing. And he now sees with his recovery how he's getting put in the place in front of people to help them. That's how, when I say make trauma and abandonment a gift, that's what I'm talking about. It's not something you have to like. I'm not telling any of you that I'm glad you have trauma and abandonment in your life, but I am telling you, you already had it. So you can't turn the clock back. Figure out ways to make this more for you. So wounded self tells us stay safe. Wounded self tells us we're not worthy. Wounded self tells us that we're so unworthy we can't set boundaries, so we get hurt a lot. We don't have expectations for ourselves to get better. We don't do anything that helps us to move forward because wounded self tells us stay safe, stay broken. You know that, and you won't get hurt anymore. How many of you I grew up with a parent who used to say, don't have big expectations because then you won't be as disappointed if it doesn't work out. That is a symbolic wounded self statement. The real way to have a rich, full, meaningful life is to understand purpose, to have meaning, to have love in your life. That's what purpose is. So for many of us, we just are getting by. We're struggling. We loathe ourselves. We judge ourselves. But this is back to that medical model versus the moral model. The medical model is you got to start getting to support groups. You need to go to therapy. You need to pray. You need to do these things. Support groups help us to not show our righteousness, but our brokenness. That's the purpose. And what's the real purpose for support groups? To help us become good and decent people. That's what we're after. But our disease thinking tells us we're not. We are loathsome. We are awful. We are terrible. We're stupid. We're all the stuff we come up with, our inner critic tells us to keep us from recovering. And so what do? We continue to be on the reckless, dysfunctional path of doing more things that harm us. We keep doing them over and over, harming us, but it's better than living clean and sober. So again, habitual behavior to avoid pain. That's how I see addiction. So let's think about this for a minute. What's our hurts, habits, and hang-ups thinking versus grace thinking? So our wounded self, our hurts, habits, hang-ups goes, we got to live by willpower. Because you still are drinking when you say you're not going to, that means you're weak, you're stupid, you can't do it. See what I mean? Oh, let's live with toxic shame. We'll add that to my willpower. All those things I just described about myself. I am never enough. I can't stand myself. I am on a continued theme of bashing myself, and I never expect more than mediocrity. I try to control the feelings of others around me. I try to control my feelings. I see them all as questionable, bad, all those things. I deny, I rationalize, I project, I live with resentments and anger. I resist change and risk. I use substances, people, and processes to help me get through. That's hurts, habits, and hang-ups thinking. Grace thinking. Jesus is grace. That's him. That's why he came here. God's grace, he does not keep score. We have to understand that. God understands our hearts. We can't do anything to earn God's love. We have to understand we're in a disease that is killing us and harming others around us. We have to take loving and caring action for ourselves. We need to go to support groups. We need to find people so we don't, again, come in and hide our brokenness, but actually highlight our brokenness. And then you know what? We can face our pain, and then guess what? We can serve others. That is how it works. But you can stay miserable because that's what a lot of us are doing. So I'm going to read 2 Corinthians. I read this last week, but I think it's such a great example of hopefully it'll help you to see that the pain and the questioning and the anger and all those things in your life, maybe there's purpose to it. So this is Paul writing. He's talking about himself here. Because of the extravagance of those revelations, and so I wouldn't get a big head, I was given the gift of a handicap to keep me in constant touch with my limitations. Never quite figured out what that was. So let's go down the recovery route for us, that our limitation is our hurts, habits, and hang-ups, our shame, our loathing, our post-traumatic stress, all those things. That's our handicap. Satan's angel did his best to get me down. Think about it. When we're at those moments, we make the dumbest decisions. We live in darkness. We're in pain. We turn away from all the goodness just so that we continue to be addicted and be miserable. Satan's angel did his best to get me down. What he in fact did was push me to my knees. No danger then of walking around high and mighty. At first I didn't think of it as a gift and begged God to remove it. 3 times I did that. So for us, let's go down the recovery route again. You're addicted. It's not good. You're doing it because you loathe yourself, because of your trauma, your pain, your abandonment, all those things that's happened to you. That's why you do all this stuff. But how about if you could start thinking of it differently and see it as a gift? I know it's crazy, but for you that have been in recovery for a while, you know it's not crazy at all. You know it's good. But for you guys that are new, that sounds terrible. You're supposed to be glad about being sexually abused. You're supposed to see it as a gift that you were living in poverty and shame. Or as a gift that your dad came home and beat the crap out of your mom. Or it's a gift that your mom never could bother to get off drugs to take care of you and was always gone. Or we go on, right? No, I'm not glad any of that happened to you, but it did. And so you got to do something about it. You got to see this eventually in recovery as a gift. I know it's hard to hear, but Paul's talking about this. At first, I didn't think of it as a gift and begged God to remove it. 3 times I did that, and then he told me, my grace is enough. It's all you need. My strength comes into its own in your weakness. That's it, people. When you quit trying to be the willpower guy or woman, when you stop trying to be powerful and all-knowing and either recklessly living your life, destroying yourself, trying to kill yourself in some manner, or you start seeing this as God's love is greater than anything you've done. God's grace and love for you is way past the worst thing you've done. I know it's hard to understand that, but that's how it works. God knows your heart. So Paul continues, once I heard that, I was glad to let it happen. I quit focusing on the handicap and began appreciating the gift. So he's telling us he started to appreciate having a handicap. That's when you can make it. It was a case of Christ's strength moving in on my weakness. Now I take limitations in stride. And for us, maybe now I take relapse in stride. I take my bad decision making in stride. And with good cheer, these limitations that cut me down to size, abuse, accidents, opposition, bad breaks, I just let Christ take over. And so the weaker I get, the stronger I become. So I want to make sure you understand. I hope you're hearing this. Now, he lets Christ take over means Paul knows he can handle things better. He didn't say all's going to be well. So make sure you hear that. It's going to be tough. But let's be honest, if you're in recovery, anything's better than being at rock bottom in the hell that you experienced. And one way to do that is to understand that Christ loves you. Jesus is talking to John 4, he goes, those who are simply and honestly themselves before him in their worship. God is sheer being itself, spirit. Those who worship him must do it out of their very being, their spirits, their true selves in adoration. That is way easier said than done. You don't have to hide. Be honest. Be honest when you pray to God. He knows anyway. So willpower doesn't work. I hope you're hearing that. We try to attack our bad thoughts with willpower. We say we're going to like ourselves more. We're going to read more self-help books, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to read the Bible more. I'm going to read more so I can get better. Well, okay, but you got to do it for the right reasons. Willpower doesn't work. It cannot self-convert you. It's muscular thinking. I'm doomed for failure. I just increased the willpower. I try harder. That's what I'm going to do. It works so well. The only cure for possession is repossession. And some of us do it by repressing. So try a little exercise here for you. Look around your room. I don't know what's in your room, but let's say you got a plant in your room. I'll say to you, all right, close your eyes and whatever you do not think about that plant. Guess what you're going to do? You're going to think about that plant. That's what willpower does for us. You can't be human. You can't be yourself when you're running around with willpower. So make sure you hear me, though. It's your job to recover. God's grace is there to give you the strength to recover. You got to do the stuff. This isn't, I just decided to quit and never had another urge again or a craving at all. I didn't even want to go back on my phone and make those texts to that person. No, that's not how it works. The point is, it's a process. It takes time. You have to slowly but surely get yourself back. Your wounded self tells you not to get yourself back. One of wounded self's favorite little ploys is I've had people say this to me. So they come into my office and they're in their 40s. And they go, why didn't I do this sooner? No, that's wounded self talking there. You did it when you were ready to. You did it when you needed to. Yes, people in your 20s, I hope you're recovering. Most of you don't. We don't have enough pain yet to recover in our 20s. So our wounded self, again, seeks to get love and avoid pain. Believes I'm unworthy. It works so well. My hurt times has become my master. The good news about grace, I don't have to be a slave to my hurts, habits, and hangups, to my thinking, to my using, to all those things. God trusts you. I know that's crazy, but he does. Nothing will be wasted or used against you. All these experiences you're having as you get healthier, as you recover, will make you a better person. It really is funny when they talk about this, but addiction is the only disease I know of or on earth that once you have it, once you recover from it, you actually are a better person. Just remember, all's been forgiven. God does not keep a score. God will use your sins to transform you. Basically, that's what Paul was saying. So only when I let go of trying to be good will I recover. Only when I let go of keeping score will I recover. Only when I see myself as a sinner who can't self-improve, that will be when I can recover. When I truly let go and truly understand God's grace, I will be able to make it. The 12 steps, the first 3 steps are basically, I can't, he can, so let him. So hopefully we can start to see ourselves as more worthy, as not so bad, not so broken. I've had people say to me, oh my gosh, the stuff I've done, if I set foot in a church, lightning would strike me. That is so sad, and it's so untrue. God knows your heart. So I hope today that what we can hear is that willpower obviously does not work. God's love and grace does. We will never, ever have a rich, full, meaningful life as long as we are hiding, denying, rationalizing, judging ourselves, all that stuff. Once we've become aware of what's going on in our lives, once we become aware of the past, how it affects us today, we can put logic to it, we can recover, we can start feeling better about ourselves, and we can move on. So I hope that you can see God as your loving God, and that you can see your hurts, habits, and hang-ups as a prison. So, again, I'm glad you joined me today. I'm hoping that you can join us here at our NorthStar community meetings on Wednesdays and Fridays at 6:30. We also have Sunday morning at 9 a.m. We have online service at 11:15. So any of those you can come join us. If you don't live locally, obviously you're watching this online. If you ever want to talk to me, get a hold of me. The best way to do that is csimpson@wgva.church. So I thank you again for joining me, and I hope you have a less willpower week and a more letting go, loving God week. So let us close with a prayer of serenity. Again, I always tell people when they're all talking about all this stuff, I go, I think there's a prayer out there somewhere that actually kind of tells us how to live. So let's pray, and again, thanks for joining me. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as a pathway to peace, taking, as Jesus did, the sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that Jesus will make all things right if I surrender to his will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever and the next. Amen. So again, thank you for joining me, and have a great week.